Today we're going to do a public service announcement. Today is August the 15th, 2024, and what came across a lot of different videos on YouTube was about Joe Biden negotiating Medicare drug price reduction.
Some news now. For the first time, Medicare has negotiated the cost of prescription drugs directly with drug manufacturers this morning.
These drugs are very, very common. If you're 50 and over, more than likely you have been prescribed one of these drugs or you will be prescribed one of these drugs.
The Biden administration is announcing new lower prices for some of the most expensive drugs out there, including major medications that manage diabetes, prevent strokes and blood clots. The discounted prices see a drop of up to 79%.
Now, I did a personal video for my YouTube channel regarding Entresto, which is another heart medication. And here you see the price, $628, negotiated down to $295. If you want to go deeper into the drug pricing, I'll attach my own video down below on that. But let's move on and talk about what Joe Biden has done. And by the way, just so you guys know, the drugs we're talking about are Eliquis, Jardiance, Xarelto, Januvia, Farxiga, Entresto, and the list goes on. Most of these drugs are for all of the things that you can imagine that are actually very, very common ailments for people. And more importantly, drugs that aren't necessary when you know how to reverse the problem. But more on that later. She said that Medicare drug price negotiations will save $6 billion. Now, granted, I like looking at the glass half full that they're going to save $6 billion. But what you're about to hear is how we've been flim-flammed in America spending $6 billion more than we should have.
Now, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra. Mr. Secretary, these are drugs many people take to basically stay alive.
The negotiations are done. The prices are now final. They will be now put into the system and take effect for people to see on January 1st, 2026.
What kind of a difference are people going to see actually at the cash register, picking up their drugs at the pharmacy? You've got drugs like Eliquis and Jardiance and Xarelto.
These drugs are for diabetes and heart failure, for blood clots, for stroke, for kidney disease, rheumatoid arthritis, blood cancers, Crohn's disease. What all of these are things that could be avoided when you know how the body works. And that's how I make sure that my clients know when they come in to get rid of the belly fat, they're learning how to work with their body so that they can reverse these problems or prevent them from even happening.
Well, and because, the health system is so complicated, made complicated so that way people can take money without being obvious. But
his words were, the medical system was made so complicated so that way people can take money without being obvious.
In the program, Medicare, the program, you and I as taxpayers and folks who work to be able to earn their Medicare, we all paid through our taxes to shore up the Medicare program. And then once you're a Medicare beneficiary, you sometimes have to add a copayment out of your own pocket for that drug that you're about to get. Those copayments, what you pay out of pocket, will come down. In fact, the estimate is by about $1.5 billion for those Americans who take these 10 drugs.
So he just said how much the copayment out of your own pocket is going to come out to over $1 billion. That means we Americans have been, meaning I think we got the short end of the stick, and now he just let the cat out of the bag that we've been heisted for over $1 billion as Americans, paying these drug prices that are extremely over what they should have been in the first place.
We were able to drive the cost of each of those drugs down significantly. So the program Medicare saves, as you said, about $6 billion in this first year.
You heard it, $6 billion in just 1 year. I have clients who have been on, let's give you an example of high blood pressure medication for 10 years. Now, granted, the blood pressure medications are not very expensive. They don't cost $600 to $700 a month. But when that isn't taken care of, they end up with heart disease that puts them in the category where they're having to take a heart medication like Entresto, which is on the list of these drugs, which now makes them at a point where they're spending $600-700 a month on drugs. But here we are in the Goodbye Gut program. We get rid of the high blood pressure so that they don't end up with the cardiovascular disease that comes later. Or if they come in and they already have cardiovascular disease, what we're doing is reversing it so they don't have to pay these prices for these drugs that are, I would say, quote unquote, questionable as to their efficacy. But more on that later.
Americans who are beneficiaries within Medicare who have to pay out of pocket will save an additional about $1.5 billion collectively.
So, Mr. Secretary, if you're on Medicare Part D, D is in Delta, and you're going to get your prescriptions, how much are you going to save in January 1st, 2026, and why isn't it January 1st, 2025?
But you have to give time for the new pricing to get inputted into the system all over the country. We're going to start the negotiation for the next round of 15 drugs that will take, the prices will take effect in January 2027. So it's going to go on like that. I can't give you a specific number that each person will save because each person has different insurance within the Medicare program, pays a different amount out of their own pocket, but they will save money because we're reducing the overall cost.
This is a savings for Medicare. And the reason this should matter to you, even if you say, well, I'm not on Medicare, so it doesn't hurt me. No, it does hurt you because Medicare is paid for every time you get your paycheck and you see all those deductions out of your paycheck. Well, that one of those deductions is going in to fund Medicare. So you pay for it whether you know it or not. And so this is affecting every American who has a job or every American who has a business or every American who uses money in the United States. And I would think that would be just about everybody.
It seems kind of implausible in this day and age of things moving so fast that it would take a year to get just drug prices in the system. Can't that be done much quicker than that if it's really just a kind of internet thing?
Caddy, we could input it and have it in effect sooner, but by law, it's supposed to take effect January 1st, 2026.
And the second is, what impact might this have on research and development, which is something that drug companies always say is the reason they can't lower prices?
Well, listen to what the drug companies themselves had said to Wall Street and to their investors. They've said that they can absorb these savings that Medicare will see.
The drug companies have admitted, hey, we make enough money. Yeah, okay, we're just not going to make as much as we normally did.
They've never indicated that they're going to have to cut back on their research and development. Innovation will continue because we reduce the price. They're still making money.
The reason research and development will continue because it's part of a game. A lot of drugs that are currently out right now are phenomenal, but they like to come up with these new drugs that they just change one little thing so they can change the patent and then jack up the price, which, by the way, you'll see that in my video that I'm going to link below where I go more in depth into that. So that's why research and development will continue because same playbook, but a new drug so they can continue to jack up the prices and make a huge profit margin. So here we are now with this video that I had made probably, I think it was May of this year. And again, I said I'll link it below. I used Entresto, which is the heart medication, as an example. And at the time when I did that, I'm in Southern California, and Rite Aid is where I found the cheapest or the least expensive cost. And it was at that time $723.65. And in the video, I go into how enalapril does the same thing basically for under $20. So here was the key item of that video, and that is 97% saw no difference in death rate, which means 97% of the people who took this drug saw no benefit when it came to death, because this is what it's supposed to do, is to help keep you alive. You heard the newscaster in the beginning that many people are on these drugs to keep them alive, and that's what this was supposed to do, the Entresto, because it's a heart medication. So I gave in the video that this is costing $704 a month more than it should for everyone, just because they're not using this drug enalapril, which has been around for a very long time. And here it is, over $8,000 a year in savings when you use the other drug that already existed, that already has the abilities to do many of the things this new drug did with less side effects. I want you guys to understand the cost of these drugs when you think, well, I just go and I pay $20 of a copay for a drug, or maybe I'll pay $30 a copay. If you break up the drug cost, it's in three parts. The first part is paid by you, which that's why I have this here. You pay about 20% of that drug cost. So yes, it is affecting you. So 20% of $723 is more than 20% of $20. The other person who pays this is your employer. When you have a healthcare plan and you are able to use a healthcare insurance to go buy the drug, that healthcare plan that your employer negotiated is coming out of your pocket in a sense, because they're not going to pay you as much money per hour because they have to pay for these drugs. So you see where it's affecting you. That portion is 40%. So even though your employer is paying that 40%, it's killing you on the end of your payroll, because the employer is not going to take it out of their own pocket. It's going to come out of what they have available to pay each employee, your bonuses, your vacations, and whatnot. Now, here's the third part, and this is the part that I hate the most, and that is the government paying 40% of that drug cost. And here's where the problem is. Everyone has to agree that if you're an American and 40% of our government dollars are going to these drugs that are really not doing much more for you as a person, because you just saw Entresto was one of the ones that was only a 2.7% improvement over what was already out there. It doesn't seem plausible that the government would say, oh, okay, we'll pay for that drug for the patient. No, they shouldn't be. So we're, as a government, we're getting robbed from the drug companies. And this is what's so aggravating. Doctors believe, and I was part of this as an eye doctor, I believed when a drug was FDA approved, the Food and Drug Administration approving a drug, I truly believe the reason that they approved the drug is because it was actually better than the drug that was out before it. I was wrong. That is not the case. It's called comparative effectiveness research. This is what we as doctors expected the Food and Drug Administration to do, meaning what I just said. If a company like Pfizer or Eli Lilly or Novo Nordisk comes out with a drug and wants to sell it to Medicare on the Medicare program, I believe that they did a research on it to make sure, is this drug really better than the other drug, and is the effective benefit worth the side effects that are involved? That's what I really thought. But then I come to find out the Food and Drug Administration doesn't do that at all. What they do is the drug company goes to them and the Food and Drug Administration says, well, I guess if it doesn't kill anybody, we'll go ahead and say, yeah, you can go ahead and sell it. So here's the problem. The United States is the only country in the entire world who does not do a comparative effectiveness research. And this is why drug costs in the United States are so much higher than any other country in the world. Let me repeat that. If you're an American and you're buying your medications in the United States, you are paying well over what anyone else in the world will pay, because the FDA does not conduct a comparative effectiveness research. Is it their job to do? This is not the topic of conversation for this. It's just a matter of, we need to change that. If there could be anything that I would tell President Biden or the next president that's coming, come our elections in November, I would like to let them know, hey, put us on the comparative effectiveness research. But more on that later. Here's where we're at. I live in Southern California. So let me give you an example of the drug. Let me pick one. Farxiga. Farxiga is a drug that a lot of people take who are type 2 diabetic, who have also cardiovascular disease. This Farxiga is $556 currently per month. They've brought the cost down to $178. And when I say they, I mean President Joe Biden negotiating with the drug companies for Medicare to get this at a better price. So I live in Southern California, and if I just drive, and I'm literally 9 miles away from the Mexico border, I cross the border, I can buy that drug for not $178. I can buy that drug for $80. Did you hear that? So even though Joe Biden negotiated a lower cost for us in America for Farxiga, you will still have those of us who live so close to the Mexico border. We'll just hop over to Mexico and buy it at their pharmacy in the same box, everything looking exactly the same as you would buy in the United States. It's not written in Spanish. It's written in English. Everything is exactly the same. It's just that Mexico is able to negotiate a much better price point because Mexico, like other countries, compares one drug to another and says, well, no, you're not going to sell it to our citizens in Mexico for $556 a month because it doesn't do better than this drug that already exists. So they can't get away playing that game over in Mexico or in other countries. And those of you who are from Canada, we have a lot of Canadians that come to spend the winter in the desert where I live. We call them snowbirds. And they are so happy that they can go and cross the border into Mexico and buy their medications cheaper. So because I live so close to the border, I know this. And I know all along the United States, those who live in Texas and every state that's hooked onto Mexico knows this. But here's the thing. Crossing the border in areas of Texas can be very dangerous. So it would be unfair to make our U.S. citizens have to do that trek, all because the United States has been taken advantage of for decades upon decades. We have the highest healthcare cost with the worst outcome, just so you know. Here's the other part that the news have not shown, because I've watched a lot of videos so that you don't have to. There is one video that I did see out there where they said this blurb so quickly, I don't know how many people caught it, but they are now doing a subsidy for these drug companies. Let me explain what a subsidy is. A subsidy is a financial benefit or support given to individuals, businesses, or institutions, usually by the government, to promote the public interest. Subsidies are often considered to be in the overall interest of the public and are given to promote a social good or economic policy. They can be direct, such as a cash payment, or indirect as tax breaks. So this is where I'm like, oh, okay, here's the back door. Biden's going to lower drug prices. But then if he goes and gives subsidies, now we're into the realm of, are we still paying for these drugs at a higher cost? I don't know. That's a whole nother topic for somebody who knows more about how the government works. But here's the other thing that I did not see in the videos, except for one other video. And this was a very short snippet. And that is the drug companies are now filing lawsuits right off the bat. And why are they doing it now? Because you heard in the video that by 2026 to 2027, these lower drug prices are supposed to go into effect. And I believe what they're trying to do is make sure these lawsuits get in place so that they can stop this from happening. Who knows? Maybe the first 10 drugs will go through, but maybe the next 15 that they had on deck are going to be protected because these lawsuits. But I bring this all up to you for a reason, because I want you to be buyer beware. And that is, this is Donald Trump 5 years ago. 5 years ago, and I'm surprised that there was only 9.5 thousand views on this. There should have been 100 million views on this, but I think social media has a way of hiding these things. I'm going to play just a short part of it.
We spend more than $1 billion a year on 2 drugs to treat bone disease, but we could save more than $800 billion. Think of that, $800 billion saving for our seniors by paying the prices other countries pay. Nothing special, just the prices that other countries pay.
5 years ago, that's all he wanted to do. He didn't want to go in and fight these drug companies. He just said, put us on the even playing field. So what he goes on to say is how the United States of America has our citizens paying more for the same drug that another country pays a lot less for. So in reality, we Americans are paying the cost of drugs for other countries. And that is not fair for us Americans. Therein lies the problem too. So this plan by Biden is not new. It was started years ago, and unfortunately, this video didn't get much views, and I'm interested to see how much the new video gets, because I don't think that the drug companies want you guys to know that you should have a lower price point. But let me remind you, the drugs, Eliquis, Jardiance, Xarelto, Januvia, Farxiga, Entresto. The list is there for you guys to see. The reason most of you out there are on these medications, I would say 85% of the reasons you go to a doctor for could be prevented, or if you have it, could be reversed. And these are the reasons I get taken off of YouTube sometimes with my videos, because of what I'm saying. So again, this is why I do a private course where I teach my clients how to do that, to get rid of the belly fat without diet or exercise, and to reverse disease. And I can say that freely in my private course. I try to give you guys as much as I can online on YouTube for free. But again, there's limitations to what I'm allowed to do, or I may get taken off the platform. And this is what I teach in my course. And that is, when somebody asks me, is this better than that? And I always respond with, compared to what? And that's all we were asking the drug companies to do. When Farxiga came out, compared to other drugs that were already existing, all we wanted our government to do is to ask, is Farxiga better than XYZ drug? That's it. Simple question. But why is that not asked? Because the drug companies have so much money that they can pad the pockets of politicians to look the other way, or pad the pockets of someone in the FDA, or pad the pockets of someone in government. And let me give you, and I'm going to bring up Obama. You guys all know that Obama did Obamacare. When he did Obamacare, he could have done more for us US Americans by completing this task that Donald Trump started and now Joe Biden is trying to finish. Obamacare was years ago. We are way behind the 8 ball on this. Past President Obama or Michelle Obama is listening to this. I want the answer. Why didn't you go after the low-lying fruit of what was already out there? The data was there to show that there was no need for us to be paying the prices we were paying. All you had to do was look at the data. That was it. And all we had to do was put ourselves on equal footing to what other countries were paying, to be fair to the US population. That would have done a whole lot better than Obamacare ever did for us. Imagine what we could do with $6 billion a year more in our pocket. So I hope you got something out of it, and give me a thumbs up if you did, so you'll get more of my videos. And if you're interested in being a part of the program, just click the link below this video. It's my calendar, and you can get on there and tell me what health problems you're dealing with, so we can talk about what options you have. So I look forward to talking to you on the other side.